Back here now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to get into a little bit more of the game tonight before we start recapping some of the bigger stories from yesterday, because there were a lot of them. But I wanted to talk about the game tonight here just for a moment, just for this segment, just because it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good matchup for a lot of reasons, right? The Jets are traveling across the country to Aaron Rodgers' home state to take on the 49ers on the first edition of Monday Night Football tonight, set to kick off at 8:15 Eastern Time. Aaron Rodgers, first game after a year off because of that ruptured Achilles injury, and now basically with this Jets team starting a new season, starting with a lot new excitement, but basically the same team that comes over from last year, right? It was just missing the quarterback with Aaron Rodgers being hurt. Now, hopefully we can meet these expectations and we can finally see all these answers that have been kept from us for a whole year, right? With Aaron Rodgers getting injured so early on in the year, that whole season was pretty much chalked up to nothing for the Jets. And now it's the time to put up, really, or shut up in this matchup, because you're going up against the representative from the NFC. And if there was ever a time for really either of these teams to make a statement, it would be with this matchup, just because the 49ers, also from their standpoint, have been dealing with a lot this offseason, a lot of stuff off of the field. Brandon Ayuk, right, obviously, Trent Williams, and Christian McCaffrey also not being able to practice. All those guys should be ready to go in this matchup. And finally, like I said, after a bunch of stuff just circling around for weeks and weeks and weeks, I think people just wanted it to end rather than have it favor them in any other way. I think people just wanted to see it end, and now finally the 49ers can focus on football and start talking about, we're only in September, only the first week of the regular season, but this team is really Super Bowl or bust at this point, and they need all of their attention now, starting from this game and going forward. So that's pretty much the overview of it. Getting more into the specifics of each team, looking at the New York Jets here. Their first game, obviously, going to be on the road in San Francisco. Their first look at a new offensive line for them, with Morgan Moses coming over at right tackle, Tyron Smith, their new left tackle as well, and John Simpson coming over from the Baltimore Ravens for one of their guard spots on their offensive line, right? That's a pretty formidable offensive line now with those three guys, Elijah Vera Tucker and their center, who's escaping my mind. And it's just a completely different look now from last year, where I know Rodgers didn't play, but the offensive line was a big question last year. And now, while that was a question going into this year, they did a good job of addressing it with three capable starters for this team. So that shouldn't be an issue right off the bat. Also, they were able to bring in Mike Williams to kind of complement Garrett Wilson on the offensive side of the ball. The tight end spot is another one where I would have liked to have seen them add a little bit more talent, a little bit more of an established name. I'm not too sure who the tight end is right now, but I would have liked to have seen someone been added there. But Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, along with Breece Hall, is not a bad combination whatsoever. Even still, they have Allen Lazard trying to bounce back from the season that he had last year. So they have a good group of playmakers there. Obviously, Garrett Wilson being highlighted the most out of all of those guys. But Mike Williams will be one. He should be active tonight. I haven't seen him on any injury reports or anything like that. The question just will be how much he will be playing after a very serious ACL injury. That'll be something to keep in mind. If he's on a snap count or anything like that, we'll keep an eye on that. Also, Mike Williams will be playing, but Hassan Reddick is probably not going to be playing, according to all the reports and all the news that have come out just today. Hassan Reddick, because of that, will be forfeiting an $800,000 game check for not playing in tonight's game. He is still holding true to his word and holding out from not getting that new contract extension for the Jets. It seems like he's not budging after, missing the entire offseason and now trickling into the regular season. It looks like Hassan Reddick is really going to bunker down and not going to show up until the Jets finally cave and give him that contract extension. I think that they should. And this game will either push him over the line to go and do it, or we're just going to be left in this gray area where Hassan's not doing anything. The Jets say the Jets win tonight, if they win, they might not feel like they necessarily need Hassan Reddick right now, and they'll have no problem finding him again if he misses another game. So you don't want it to get to that, obviously, because then it just gets uglier and a lot more messy. So for right now, Hassan will not play in this game. He'll have to forfeit that check, obviously, and we'll see how much he will be missed tonight, obviously, because the 49ers offensive line is very good. Trent Williams on one side, and their entire offensive line has just been solid, at least since Brock Purdy has been their quarterback. And for the Jets, similar to that point, also sticking on the Jets, Bryce Huff, one of their leading sack leaders from a year ago. He is now gone. He is now on the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll see if that has any impact, if Hassan will be more of a missing piece now that Bryce Huff is gone, who's going to step up to kind of complement Quinnen Williams, Jeremiah Johnson, and all those guys to get a real pass rush going, because you can't have just Brock Purdy sitting back there for numerous seconds just finding any of his weapons that will get open if they are left open long enough. So that's going to be something that I will be looking at as well as the game goes on. Then moving on to the 49ers here a little bit, just talking about them and what they have to, address going into this game. No real missing pieces, just that we didn't know about already going into this game. Drake Greenlaw, he's going to be on IR for a couple weeks. Talanoa Hufanga could be playing. I haven't updated it yet on any injury reports. Last time I saw it, he was questionable at this morning. So throughout this segment, I will check on that to see if that changes. But for right now, he's questionable. He could be playing after missing the majority of last year with a serious injury that he suffered as well. Then moving on from that, you have another person that's obviously going to be out is Ricky Pearsall with everything that happened and being shot and everything. He was put on not the injury reserve, but a different list, the non-injury related list that keeps him out for, I want to say, 4 weeks as well, recovering from all of that, taking all the time that he needs, right? So he won't be playing in this game, obviously. So pretty much on top of that, we should have everybody else healthy and ready to go. Christian McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Trent should all be ready to go in tonight's matchup. Now that I'm looking at it, Talanoa Hufanga, the 49ers safety, is doubtful. He was downgraded a couple hours ago, so we probably won't see him in the secondary for the 49ers, which, they've been without him for a while now, so it doesn't change too much, but they would have loved to have him in there and be close to 100% as possible, but it doesn't look like he'll play. He has been downgraded to doubtful for tonight's game. And now, some more information before I get into the key matchups and factors into this game. Looking at Aaron Rodgers playing again against the 49ers, it's funny because the way these stats and random facts you see about some of these players, right? I saw something that Aaron Rodgers hasn't lost a Monday Night Football game since like 2012 or something like that. So that gives you some confidence, right? That maybe if you're trying to throw some money on this game or something, maybe the Jets is the way to go to kind of upset the 49ers here. But also, if you look at the last time Aaron Rodgers has played the 49ers, the last two playoff meetings, the 49ers have won, but the last two regular season meetings, Aaron Rodgers has won, but he was still with Green Bay, right? Now, obviously, with a different team. There could be some differing factors there, but Aaron Rodgers, in different circumstances, playoffs versus regular season, having very different results against the 49ers, so take that as you will. And also, the 49ers enter this new season with another new defensive coordinator, that being Nick Sorensen, with Brandon Staley, the old head coach of the 49ers, also on that coaching staff for Kyle Shanahan. And now, with all that basic information for you guys out of the way, now looking at the matchups I'm really interested in looking at to give us an idea of what to look for and kind of giving us a reason as to why one of these teams will win tonight. You look at the first one, Nick Bosa going up against Morgan Moses, and Leonard Floyd going up against Tyron Smith. The two new tackles for the Jets, playing in their first game together, obviously, going up against one of the best pass rushers in the league in Nick Bosa, and Leonard Floyd as well. How much pressure can these two guys apply to Aaron Rodgers? Because Aaron Rodgers, I'm a little weary of that Achilles just because I saw Kirk Cousins play on it yesterday. And there was a lot of formations, a lot of schemes where Kirk was pretty much in the pistol or in the shotgun formation a lot of the game. And, they never said it was because he couldn't move or too much like that. But you can kind of, connect the dots and realize that when you're in the shotgun, you're not really doing a lot of movement because you're not really too sure of that Achilles injury. So that's something I'll be looking at to see if they could apply any sort of pressure to Aaron Rodgers, how quickly Aaron's getting the ball out of his hand. That'll be something I'm looking forward to as well. Then just sticking on Aaron Rodgers, that matchup, Aaron Rodgers versus Fred Warner. I'm always interested when there's great quarterbacks going up against some of the best linebackers in the NFL, a la Ray Lewis, Peyton Manning, Ray Lewis, Tom Brady. We saw it on Thursday, Roquan Smith and Patrick Mahomes. All these guys going up against, their equal on the opposite side of the ball. How do they call their defense, their offense based on what they see, what they're anticipating, how they audible out of certain stuff. All of that is super fascinating to me, and I think it's going to be a great chess match between Rodgers and Fred Warner. Then sticking to it, you have Sauce Gardner against Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. How do each of them fare against Sauce Gardner, and how well does the other one do when they're away from Sauce? And maybe they're targeted a little bit more. Maybe Brock Purdy still tries to test Sauce Gardner. How does that all work out for him? It'll be super interesting, and whether or not the 49ers can take advantage of the other defensive back opposite of Sauce Gardner and see if that's a weak point that they'd like to attack in this game. Then you look at some of the factors that I think will determine this game, which team can get the running game going with Breece Hall and Christian McCaffrey. I think, obviously, Christian McCaffrey established as, I think, the best running back in the NFL. But then you look at a guy like Breece Hall. A lot of executives and coaches are very high on him, believing he could be the next great running back. Which team can get their running game going, because it's going to be a huge determinant of who's controlling the pace, who's controlling, how long the opposing defense is out there on the field. With two great defenses like these, the running game is a huge advantage if you're able to get that going. So which one wins the matchup there? Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, how does their chemistry look going up against this 49ers secondary? Obviously, Garrett is the main target for Rodgers, and how do the 49ers kind of try to take him away from Aaron, force him to look at everybody else, and how successful is he in doing all of that? And lastly here, how well does Aaron Rodgers, again, move on that injured Achilles? We saw Kirk look a little bit uncomfortable, throw some bad passes, some bad interceptions because he had the pressure on top of him, not being able to escape. Does Aaron Rodgers face the same difficulties, similar injuries from a year ago? That will be something huge to look at. But in terms of my predictions, I feel like I'm already, I think, 1-1 in these scenarios, right? I picked the Chiefs because they had less to figure out. I picked the Packers in the next game because they also had less to figure out. And now I still want to go with the 49ers because, again, they have less to figure out. They know who they are. They have the exact same team coming over from a year ago, give or take a few players. They know who they are. They know what they're trying to get to. They know their weaknesses, their strong points. They have a lot more figured out than I think the Jets do, traveling across the country as well. I feel like it's a lot to just throw out there for their first game. Aaron Rodgers, a tough opponent, coming off of a year-long reserve, being on the bench, being injured. I think all of that stuff stacks up against you, and I think the 49ers would just be a little bit more comfortable in tonight's game to get to their stuff, execute on it, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win this game. I'm going to say 23 to 14, the 49ers will win off of this game, off of the 49ers, the Jets, trying to still get everything to going. I like the 49ers in tonight's matchup, so if you're betting on it or anything like that, if you want to take my advice, I think the 49ers will win tonight's matchup, but that is set to kick off in about just over an hour from now, so we'll get to that after tonight's show. But moving on to a different topic now after this upcoming break, we're going to talk about some of the storylines from this past Sunday, specifically on the AFC North. A lot of the teams, most of the teams falling to 0-1. One team leading the division, 1-0. And what do we make of the disappointing performances from the Browns, the Bengals, not so much the Ravens, and not so much the Steelers? We're going to get into dissecting that division a little bit more after this break. We'll be right back.